Representatives of the least developed countries and small island nations walking out of negotiations at the UN's annual climate summit in Azerbaijan.
I've called for suspension of the meeting until our views, our inputs get reflected are reflected. Yeah.
The walkout coming as the summit entered its first day of overtime. It was set to wrap up Friday, but is now into extra hours as negotiators from nearly 200 countries attempt to adopt a climate funding plan for the next decade that would see wealthy countries offer assistance to developing nations.
We are calling for an ambitious figure that will take us up from where we are.
The G20 accounts for more than 80% of global emissions, yet small, underdeveloped countries tend to bear the brunt of climate change. Therefore, a major focus of the summit has been to finalize a deal that would see those latter nations receive annual installments to help combat their climate woes. Earlier in the week, the EU, the US, and other wealthy countries raised their offer to $250 billion a year, but it was shot down by delegates. Then on Saturday morning, the number was raised to $300 billion a year, but that still did not achieve a mandatory consensus.
It's a very difficult moment. There is half of the world just walk out, or a very important portion, and we need to engage deeply in negotiation. There is dissatisfaction from the South around the quantum and around some of the conditions that are in that text. I think that can be solved, but it requires political will and mobilizing.
Those who walked out say they're frustrated that the proposed deals lack inclusivity, adding that the suspension of talks is not to end them, but rather rebuild the conversation to include the interests of developing nations. They're hoping to reach a deal amounting to $1.3 trillion a year, a number that is agreed upon by some climate experts. If the gap in numbers cannot be bridged, experts say there are two possibilities. One being that the meeting is adjourned temporarily until next January, and two, financial talks get pushed entirely into next year's COP30 summit in Brazil. For City News, I'm Karling Donoghue.